More than 2,700 years ago, around 753 BC, the epic story of the birth of one of the greatest civilizations in history, Rome. The pages of history are steeped in mystery, courage, and tragedy, shrouded in the mists of legend. The setting is grand and the drama divine. The origin of Rome can be traced back to a story of valor and struggle, intrigue and power, all cloaked in a halo of myth and legend. According to tradition, the birth of Rome traces its roots to the twins, Romulus and Remus, whose divine birth and supernatural upbringing preceded the founding of a city that would become the heart of an empire. Rhea Silvia, a Vestal priestess known for her virtue and beauty, was the daughter of Numitor, king of Alba Longa. The story goes that she was visited by the god Mars, the furious god of war, who, enchanted by her purity and devotion, took her as his own. From this divine union, Romulus and Remus were born, two children destined for great deeds. However, fate intervened in the form of the tyrant Amulius. The newborn Romulus and Remus are condemned to an almost certain fate of death by drowning. His grandfather, the overthrown king Numitor, had been deposed from the throne by his cruel brother Amulius. Fearing that the twins would grow up and claim their right to the throne, Amulius ordered the babies to be thrown into the raging and turbulent Tiber River. But the gods had other plans for the infants destined for greatness. In a basket, the fragile bodies of Romulus and Remus were placed and thrown into the raging currents of the Tiber. As the storm raged and the waves threatened to engulf the small boat, Tibernus, the river god, calmed its waters. Protected by the divinity of the river, the basket managed to float safely to the shore. On the leafy banks of the Tiber, a figure approached the abandoned basket. A wolf, known in later stories as Lupa, had heard the cries of the children from the depths of her den. Surprised to find the two humans instead of their expected prey, the wolf, moved by some ancient maternal instinct, decided to care for these helpless beings instead of devouring them. Thus, under the protective cloak of a wolf, these two infants grew up knowing life in the forest, far from the confines and intrigues of the palatial courts. They learned to be fast and strong, but it wasn't just the wild creatures that played a role in this epic narrative. One day, a shepherd named Faustulus found the twins and their wolf mother. Surprised by this unusual family arrangement, he decided to take the children home. With Faustulus and his wife, Acca Larentia, the twins gained insight into human life. Thus began the childhood of Romulus and Remus, far from the intrigues of the palace and the clutches of ambition, under the loving care of Faustulus and his wife. In the warm lap of their home, the twins grew strong and brave, their spirits forged by the beauty and ruggedness of the Italian landscape, their souls shaped by the kindness and generosity of their adoptive parents. But with each passing year, each sunrise they watched from the green hills, and each evening they spent under the stars, the twins grew in strength and courage. Stories of his divine lineage began to emerge, tales of his mother, Rhea Silvia, daughter of the true king, and her father, the god Mars. They were not mere shepherds. They were princes in their own right. And with this knowledge, a new determination grew within him. The throne of his grandfather Numitor, usurped by the cruel Amulio, cried out for justice. The fire of revenge was fanned in their hearts, and with their gaze fixed on Alba Longa, the city of their birth, they decided to face their past. The passage of time transformed the twins, Romulus and Remus, into strong and courageous men, exactly the kind of leaders any city would be proud to have. However, fate would take a dramatic turn. Remus was captured and brought before the usurper, King Amulius. Trapped in the wolf's lair, Remus, brave as he was, showed no signs of fear. Romulo, on the other hand, was in a sea of anger and worry. He knew he had to act quickly to save his brother. It was then that an elaborate strategic chess game began between Romulo and Amulio. Romulo, he gathered the shepherds and free men who had met and summoned an improvised army. Boldly, they advanced towards Alba Longa, defeating Amulius's forces and freeing Remus. In the ensuing fight, Amulio was killed, ending his reign of terror. With Alba Longa freed and its tyrannical king overthrown, the citizens sought to fill the power vacuum. Everyone's eyes turned to Romulus and Remus, the heroes of the battle and the descendants of their former king Numitor. They were offered the throne, a tribute to their bravery and royal blood. But the brothers had other plans. Romulus and Remus had been raised away from the opulence and politics of the court. Their sense of justice and honor led them to return the throne to their grandfather, Numitor, the rightful king of Alba Longa. But their destiny was tied to something bigger than themselves, a vision that would soon begin to take shape. They decided to found their own city, a place where they could rule according to their own ideals and principles. They returned to the place that had welcomed them when they were babies, the place where the wolf had found them on the banks of the Tiber River. Here, on the lands that had once protected them, they decided to establish their new city. But disagreements soon seeped into their shared vision. Both were strong, both were leaders, and both were twins, neither older than the other. The question arose, who would rule this new city? To resolve the dispute, they resorted to an ancient practice, augury, a way of interpreting the signs of the gods. Remus saw 6 birds flying across the sky, an auspicious omen, or so he thought. But then Romulo saw 12, doubling his brother's count, who had been favored by the gods. The dispute became more intense. Each one affirmed that his signal was the true one. Each one considered themselves the chosen one to lead the new city. The fate of the yet unborn city hung in a delicate balance as the brothers faced this new challenge. The city that emerged as a shared vision between 2 brothers became the scene of a painful division. Romulus and Remus, once inseparable, found themselves on opposite sides of a conflict that would determine the course of history. The signs from heaven had provided 2 conflicting answers. While Remus saw 6 birds, a good omen in itself, Romulo saw 12, twice as many as his brother. Both twins claimed to be the favorites of the gods, and with their heavenly riddle unsolved, their disagreement over who should rule the new city became a critical turning point. In one version of the story, the brothers fell into a bitter fight, the words getting harsher and the arguments hotter. The dispute escalated, and what started as a verbal disagreement soon turned into a physical confrontation. Eventually, in the ensuing skirmish, Remus fell at the hands of his own brother. Romulus, although triumphant, paid the terrible price of victory by being left alone. In another version, it was Remus's disdain and arrogance that led to his misfortune. While Romulus strove to build the walls of the new city, Remus despised them, considering them insignificant and weak. In mockery of him, Root jumped over the wall, an act that was interpreted as utter contempt and disrespect. Furious and offended, Romulo struck Remus in the heat of the moment, an action that resulted in the death of his brother. In both accounts, the result is the same, the loss of Remus. Regardless of the sequence of events, misfortune befalls the brothers, leaving Romulo to shoulder the burden of losing him and the responsibility for the new city. Romulus now had before him the daunting task of building and shaping his new kingdom. With a will of iron, he set to work bringing to life the city that would become known as Rome. And just like Romulo and Remus, we are building an empire of knowledge and wisdom, so support this channel by subscribing and sharing our stories with your friends. The first order of business for Romulo was to establish religious laws and practices. This was no small task, for it would set the tone for all of Rome's culture and civic life. Romulo knew the weight of the responsibility that rested on his shoulders, but he assumed it with dignity and determination. No less important was the next task of his, the formation of a governing body. Romulus chose 100 notable men and gave them the rank of senators. These senators were not simply administrators, they were the pillars on which the Roman state would be built. They became the main citizens of Rome and received the name of patricians. The city walls went up, a physical testimonial to the city's strength and resilience. Romulus took pride in these walls, which served both for defense and as a symbol of the Roman spirit. As the city grew, so did the walls, expanding in response to the growth of its population. But Rome was young and its population initially small. It needed people to grow and prosper. Therefore, Romulo extended an open invitation to all those who wanted to join the city. And so came the fugitives and exiles, runaway slaves and criminals, each with their own past and their own history. Despite their low social status and little respect in ancient society, they found in Rome a place of refuge and an opportunity for a new start. This was the Rome of Romulus, a city of law and order, of strength and resilience, of inclusion and opportunity. A kingdom that, under his wise leadership, would eventually become one of the most powerful empires the world has ever known. Rome, the eternal city, has a history as rich and eventful as the vast empire it came to rule. And before you leave, if you want to continue seeing some history, here are 2 videos that may interest you. Subscribe if you liked it, and see you in next week's video.